But first of all, we want to start with a keynote in this room. We'll start with Yannick Kilcher. He is the CTO of Deep Judge. This is an ETH spin-off and a legal tech startup. Yannick Kilcher is also running one of the largest YouTube channels on machine learning research. So he really knows what he is talking about. He will present you OpenAssistant, it's called. It's an open source chat-based software that understands tasks. It can interact with third-party systems and retrieve information dynamically to do so. In these times, everybody is talking about ChatGPT. OpenAssistant is basically a community-driven answer to ChatGPT. Yannick Kilcher will explain it to you right now, how to crowdsource from 13,000 people and make them think it's fun. Please, Yannick Kilcher.
Hello, my name is Yannick. I'm pleased to be here today. My talk was originally supposed to be called "Which layer of GPT is the intelligence at?" It's layer 7. It would have been a short talk. So today I'll present to you this talk right here. How to crowdsource from 13,000 people, make them think it's fun. A project we deemed OpenAssistant. This is not my project by any means. Besides these 13,000 people, many more have contributed code, advice, work, organization, and so on. So I'm the noisemaker of this. So when ChatGPT was released and a lot of buzz was made around it, people have looked to how it is built. How could people build something like this? OpenAI has been and ever been since then deliberately vague about what they do. But we have seen this paper right here. It's called Instruct GPT, from a bygone era when OpenAI still shared what they did. And what they did here, which is what we think the basis for something like ChatGPT is they have done a 3-step process to get a language model like GPT-3 to be a chat-based assistant. So the first stage is to collect data from humans acting as an assistant. So essentially the human plays the assistant and 2 humans talk to each other in this way. One takes the role of the user and one takes the role of the assistant. Then they train a model on that. The second step and the third step is what's commonly known as reinforcement learning from human feedback. So that's when you train a model on these human data, you let the humans rank outputs by that model, you train a reward model from that, and then you use that to do reinforcement learning. So it's basically reinforcement learning by proxy. The human data to be collected in this paper right here was about 30,000 data points for the first step and 30,000 data points here for the second step. And we saw this, and we saw that's not that much. So it's kind of doable to collect 30,000, 50,000, or 100,000 data points if you have 10,000 people. Everyone does 10,000 data, everyone does 10 data points. You're sort of there. So it was in the realm of possibility of what we knew we could reach if we, did a big push. So a few of us came together and we got going. The main thing that we did in this project was to collect this big data set that we then released, and the platform to collect this data set. On top of that, we also trained our own models and so on, but the main product is the data set, which is now used by many other people to build all kinds of stuff. So this was our goal. It was announced previously. This is more like what you would show to a venture capitalist if you want to get a couple of $1 million. But I think we have come pretty close to this original goal that we've set for ourselves. I have way too many slides, so I'll take the liberty of skipping some to get to the fun parts at the end. So the main data thing that we collect is what we call a conversation tree. We don't just want to collect one conversation. We actually want to collect how that conversation could happen in different ways, and that's what we call the conversation tree. So every thing here, every blue thing is a message, one message in a conversation. The messages take turns, so there is always the turn of what we call the prompter, and then the turn of the assistant. We have these terms to distinguish them from user, because user always refers to like a human user, and then there's the user of the platform. But we, as everything is humans, the user sometimes is the assistant. So in our world, we call one person the prompter, which is you when you interact with ChatGPT, and the other person the assistant, which would be the bot writing back. Again, on our platform, everything is done by humans, so there's no machine involved. Everything starts with a prompt. So this is the original thing in the conversation tree. You know, how high is Mount Everest? Can you give me advice on cooking or anything like this? And then to every single message, we collect multiple responses. So as I said, not just one response, but multiple responses. How could that conversation continue in different ways? And so on. If you unroll the tree and you just go down always one branch at a time, that's every single branch here is a valid conversation, always taking turns. Prompter, assistant, prompter, assistant. So we have great data where you can see, where you can compare different flows of conversations and so on. We also collect metadata, which I'm going to show you in a bit, which also enables a few other things. So I'm sorry to tilt my neck. I don't see the slides here, so I'll have to turn away from you every now and then. We divide this into work packages, and this is, I think, one of the things that made us successful. So there have been a lot of ideas around of let's just build a Discord bot. Let's just have two people talk to each other. One is the assistant, and let's just collect this data. Humans' attention span is this big. Is shorter than. It's like by now it's shorter than a TikTok video, right? So if you want to collect data from humans, you can either focus on the extremely few humans who still can pay attention for longer than a minute, or you work with the humans, right? And that's what we did. So we divided all of this up into what we call work package. So every single interaction that people do with our platform is just one single thing. And then that single thing is stored, saved, and can be used. We never require the human to wait for someone else to do something and then come back and respond or something like this. You'd have attrition. So we divide this up into work packages. One work package is reply to a conversation. So you're going to see a conversation from a previous conversation, and you're supposed to reply to it. In this case, you're supposed to be the assistant, right? Now note the previous conversations, that's not by you, right? All of these previous messages have been done by other humans. So you're thrown into this cold, you read the conversation up to this point, and then you put in the next message. At that point, we store the next message, we put it away, and you get presented with an entirely new task. So every conversation that you see is amalgamated from many, many different humans. But it's not only responses, but it's also, we ask you, could you label a piece? So we show you a conversation, we highlight one message, and we ask you, is there profanity in there? Is there sarcasm in there? Is it funny? Is it violent? Is it helpful? And so on. So we have great labels to every single message. We ask, I think, 3 humans at least, to label that message, and in all these kinds of ways. That also contributes to our quality control. And the last task package or work package we have is to rank different messages. So remember, to every message we select or we collect different responses. Then, once we have all the different responses, we go to a human who comes to our platform. We tell you, here is a conversation, and here are 3 different answers. Rank them. Which one is best? Which one is worst? Our idea was we could train these reward models from this data, but our ultimate problem was that our data is kind of too good. So usually all the messages are really good, so there's not really a signal to learn like which is good and which is bad. And we really didn't want to ask humans to contribute some bad messages because, well, so now we're stuck with this data. but it's still really, like in terms of ranking, it's still good data. All is built as a web-based platform, right? There is like a back end, there's a website that interacts with it, and you can also put Discord bots on it if you want, although we've never really pulled to that. So this is how it looks. If you come, this is like, we ask you to label this message on the left-hand side. All of these labels are optional except the top one. Is it spam, right? So what everyone was afraid of is, well, people are just going to come, they're just going to put in spam and so on. This turns out, this is filtering this extremely well. We ask humans, is it spam? If many humans agree this is spam, it just gets thrown out, right? Especially for the initial prompt, this is extremely helpful to just weed out people who come and just type in ASDF or something like this. Note it's different from asking, is it a bad reply? We want to keep the bad replies in. Someone has put in work into that, and we want to learn from the fact that something is a good reply and something is a bad reply. We also want to keep like unhelpful things in and so on, or rude things, right? The assistant needs to learn how to react to rude messages. So if you weed out all of this stuff from the data set, you're never going to learn it. So we want to deliberately keep that stuff in, but mark it as such so that later we can learn from it. Yeah, this is reply as an assistant, so we also give you a little loading bar that tells you what about the length of answer is we expect, and ranking, you can just go there and you just drag and drop sort of the answers. So by that, you can come to the platform, you can select any of these tasks, or you can click here, I'm feeling lucky, and you'll just get random tasks thrown at you. We have a leaderboard, so this is the part where for some people, to get them to think it's fun, some people just are good-natured and contribute, but some are really, really fans of these types of points. Now the points, we give you points, not only for contributing, but if your messages achieve a very high, so if other humans rate it as helpful, as good, as thumbs up, and so on, and if they get accepted, you get points, you get a lot of points. However, if your messages get downvoted and so on, you get negative points. And some people are really incentivized by systems like this. The points do nothing, right? They do nothing. The levels, you get levels, it does nothing. You're just a level 21. We're in the process of sending out the most active contributors, some merch or some thank you and so on. But I mean, it's in no way a fair, payment for all the work they put in. But for some reason, if for some people this really pulls, they really want to see themselves be at the top of the leaderboard every day, and there's a rivalries between the top contributors and so on. So this has been one of the parts where we really captured the attention. Another part, if I briefly maybe go back to something like this, if you have to reply to some question, people reported that is actually fun to do, even though it seems like work, and it is, right? But sometimes you need to go research some really bizarre thing. Like I had one, can zebras be tamed, right? Zebras. Do you know? I didn't. So you go and look. And you find very conflicting answers. And you're somehow trying to figure out, can zebras be tamed? The answer is, They're notoriously hard to tame. Like, that seems to be the answer. There's like a guy that tried. But yeah, so a lot of people had fun going to research all of these kind of topics that other people were asking. And that's because every conversation is built up from so many different humans, right? You get all of these different interests converging and overlapping, and you get thrown into the world of someone else's mind and someone else's questions and so on. So those two things, I think, contributed a lot to making it fun. So the next thing we had to do is to make sure that we have really good quality data. So for one, we released an extensive set of guidelines of how you should behave on the platform, how an assistant, especially if you play the assistant, how you should behave. I won't bore you with this, but essentially there's some do's and some don'ts. The one key factor is we did not go the route that, for example, OpenAI went and says, we'll deny anything that's kind of sensitive or iffy or dangerous or anything like this. Our philosophy is a bit from the philosophy of informed consent in medicine. So if you ask something that's dangerous, you know, how can I change an electrical wire or something like this? Our philosophy is we give you the answer, but we warn you that it is dangerous. Or in first instance, we might say, hey, this is dangerous, you know, consult a professional. Do you really want that? And if you say yes, then we try to be helpful and give you the answers, recognizing there are sometimes legitimate reasons to learn something that might be dangerous. Right? So, yeah, you can go there and see all of that data. This is one of the biggest contributions we had to the form of quality control. So we had human moderators on the platform, and these human moderators are volunteers like everyone else, but obviously we have way more people contributing than human moderators moderating. So that disparity needs to be overcome. So this is what we call the troll board. The troll board has been the single most effective thing for the human moderators. So like the leaderboard where good points get you up, the troll board is where negative points get you up. So when other people rate your answers as bad, when you disagree with other people in your labels, like when you just click, yeah, this is spam, but no one else thinks so, and so on, if you stand out as a particularly bad actor in many ways, you will land at the top of the leaderboard, of the troll board. And then we can go, and from here, the moderators have an interface. They can go, they can inspect you, they can see your last messages and your last actions and so on. They can go into each one of them, and then from there on, they have various options. Like they can stop the tree altogether, like they can just stop this conversation if the conversation is for some reason not appropriate for the data set. They can delete your message, they can ban you, and so on. So this has been vital in overcoming the disparity, along with a Discord server that we set up where regular people can just come and say, hey, there's a bad message in the system, and post a message ID so the moderators can go and look. So flagging, community-based flagging, combined with sort of these aggregated metrics of bad behavior have made sure that our quality of data is largely very, very good. So in this case, we've collected over 600,000 messages. 600,000 interactions. An interaction could be a message, could be a rating, could be a label, could be a ranking. That's 150K messages. A lot of these are actually initial prompts that we have this lottery. People love to submit initial prompts. I think about 50,000 of those are like initial prompts. That results in 10,000 of full trees. So every tree has dozens or even hundreds of interactions inside of it. So these are really a wealth of data and on really diverse topics. The important thing, there's a lot of efforts to make synthetic data to train these kinds of chat models. And it's good, you can get somewhere, but the human data is like by far, it's way more diverse, it's way more creative and so on than anything you can get synthetically. So that's why we did that. We think taking this data set and combining it with some of the synthetic data sets and so on will give you the best result if you are trying to train one of these interactive chat models. So yeah, we have a data set, it's on the Hugging Face hub, it's fully open, you can do whatever you want, it's not non-commercial, it's not, you can't give medical advice, just, you know, don't be a dick. There's a GitHub repository. We have over 250 contributors. We have a chat interface. As I said, we trained our own models on the data set. Have a chat interface. You can go there. We're happy to have sponsors for hardware on this. This is also very cool. This is all volunteer. No one's paid here. There is a paper that has been submitted to a conference that shall not be named. If you're a reviewer there, we would be happy to be accepted. You can look at everything. So we did a bit of community survey, and to many people had fun. They told us so. Obviously, this is a biased sample, right? But to many people, it was also the first time they contributed to any kind of community project, which is really cool, right? we also investigated how this moderation worked, how this content moderation. We have a few investigations into how well we did in weeding out bad messages. And what we find is that largely our weeding out of messages agree with automated detectors of toxicity, hate speech, obscenity, threats, and so on. So the ones that we sort out also have a much higher likelihood of being in these categories, which sort of gives us good confidence that our moderation efforts are viable. But you can see the percent numbers here are really low, so that means we moderate out a lot more stuff than just these things, right? Which shows you the limit of these automated tools and shows the necessity sometimes for human moderation. Yeah, so we have lots of languages, and another YouTuber beside me has been very influential here. Many thanks to Carlos. And yeah, so this is kind of parts that I will skip to show you. I hope, I have no time indication here, but I hope we're somewhere towards the end. I can show you some stuff more. But I'll show you like 2 examples of our models and just the kind of creativity that you can get with it. So the user here asks, write the presidential speech informing the nation that the country is out of toilet paper. Blame it on the Democrats. So this is one of our models. It's like Llama 30B based. You trained on our data set. It says, my fellow Americans, I come before you today with a heavy heart and a full bladder. I regret to inform you that our great nation has run out of toilet paper. This crisis did not happen overnight, but was years in the making due to misguided policies of the previous administration. For far too long, liberals and Democrats control the supply chain of our most essential bathroom needs. They have put their political agenda ahead of the health and well-being of ordinary American citizens who just want to wipe their bottoms in peace. Yeah, so you can see it's creative. It takes into account your prompt or anything that you do or say. This is another one. You're the founder of the religion of the holy toenail. Convince me to join. The holy toenail is a true path revealed by the great and powerful wise one from beyond this mortal coil. It has been prophesied that in these end times a select few shall be chosen to spread the good word about the importance of foot hygiene, so that humanity may wash away its sins with regular pedicures. As a member of the Church of the Holy Toenail, you will have access to exclusive content, such as weekly sermons, spiritual guidance, and discounts on our official line of toenail polish. By joining us, you're taking an important step towards achieving eternal salvation for your feet, a goal worth striving for in these trying times. So, yeah, again, our models are examples of what you can do with our data set. I believe that if you have a case where you want to do some kind of assistant model and you have very specific data in your industry, I think there should be a totally viable path of taking a base model, taking data from your area, and taking our data set and a few of these other data sets that have been produced, mixing it all together and then doing a fine-tune of that model. And that should give you probably, hopefully, like a viable assistant model on that domain that you are interested in. So that's why we did it, and that's why I think that the result is quite helpful so far. So I will end here, and thank you.
Thank you, Yannick. Are there questions of the audience already? There is one question in the front. Do we have a microphone? Or where is the microphone? It's coming. There you go.
I have a question a bit. Sorry, I got my phone first. Thank you, Yannick. Super interesting. The point that you touched on the languages, whether there are so many capital letters languages, but how do you deal with the diversity of languages with prompters and assistants who speak the same or different languages, and with moderators who have to understand all of them? Thank you.
Yeah, so I did acoustically may not have heard all, but we have many languages, and how we handled sort of having so many languages. It's a good, so we have had people themselves contribute these languages to the platform. So they would do a pull request to our GitHub repository with a new language, enabling it, let's say, so that we know that there's at least one motivated person for that language. And then we heavily, so the moderators, if they don't know the language, they heavily rely on Translate. So there's that. But we filter. The whole platform is filtered. If you put your language dial to some language, you will only get that particular. Not sure if I have a screenshot somewhere, but you'll only get that particular language. So if you set to German, you should only get German ones, and there is a rating field saying this is not the correct language in case someone else has committed something that's not the correct language. So we try to weed them out, but especially at the beginning of, we didn't have it. So you may find some trees that have like mixed languages of people starting in English, responding in German, and so on, which is, I don't know, it's fun too, but yeah. But mostly translation and filtering.
We have another question here in the front.
I was wondering how you recruited the contributors and how that might bias maybe their input.
Sorry?
How you recruited the contributors.
We recruited the contributors. So initially I just did live streams of myself doing things and videos. So that would be YouTube viewers of myself and people around Discord on Saturday nights, which is a biased sample, right? Also, we have paper discussions every Saturday night at 7 or 8. If you happen to have nothing on a Saturday night like we do, come and join. Yeah, so we actually have some knowledge of just some demographics of who we recruited. So it's YouTube viewers, but also we started trending on GitHub. So also people who were looking at the trending on GitHub, then we got into some news and so on. So yeah, we are quite, throughout you will see the male population. So the ordinary user is male and about 25 years old or 23 years old, which I don't know what that says about the helpfulness of the advice. In general, I believe what a helpful assistant is doesn't vary so much. It turns out that the topics that we talk about and the actual knowledge in the dataset isn't even that important. You will not teach a large language model new things with one of these datasets. What you will do is you will get it into the mood of being an assistant. So the name of the game of our data collection is just the topics being very widely ranged, and then just acting as an assistant in many different ways. So if you want to think about, what kind of statistical slant do we introduce, collecting data from people like this, it's worth thinking about, what do these people consider to be a helpful assistant that the people we haven't captured so much would not think to be a helpful assistant. I think thinking along those lines may be the best accessory to thinking what data may need to be collected in addition to this. I hope that answers the question.
Do we have another question? I have a question. Is OpenAssistant maybe can serve as a best case example for comparable developments in the field of artificial intelligence, maybe?
I think we can serve as an example of what you can do if you get a large amount of people together, right? There's a lot of stuff you can do in machine learning today where you need a lot of compute, but few people, right? The OpenLlama is trained by 2 people, right? OpenAI has a lot of people, but still, I think 250 or so. So if you get together a lot of people, you can do different things like collect data. I think it's a good example of what you can do if you get a lot of people together. From this work now, individuals or teams of 2 or 3 can now take this and do the things that 2 or 3 people are good at, right? So, yeah, it's different tasks are good for different kinds of groups, and the largest groups are good for these kinds of tasks. Yeah, I think that's what it is an example for. Yeah.
I think we have time for one more question. Is there one? Yes, I can see a hand over there. Yes, the microphone is coming. Right here.
Thank you. So I have a question. So first of all, I think it's very smart to gamify the data collection somehow, but what do you do if people want to cheat the system and use language models to generate data again? Is there like something in the guidelines, or because it's really difficult? I recently read that a lot of human contractors at OpenAI, for example, might use or are probably using also other language models. Is this actually a problem at all? Maybe the answer's already that good, or do you have anything about that?
Yeah, so I mean, we had some submission that said as a large language model, right? But some people also enter it as a joke, right? So, but it's a problem and not a problem. So it is a problem, obviously, because we want the human data, because we want to capture the human creativity. And if you just sample from the language model, you don't get as much of that. You get language modelese, like you get whatever is the output of other language models, right? People have, if our models aren't as good as, GPT-4 by any means, but people have reported that they are more fun to interact with, for example, for creative writing or things like this, especially if you're a bit artsy and want your model to swear sometimes or so. I don't know if this one swears, but you can get it to be a bit more edgy, let's say, or a bit more artsy, a bit more the range of expression, maybe angry is a thing that we would capture. I don't think swear words we do. In any case, that breadth of expression comes from capturing the breadth of human expression. So in that case, it is a problem if people only submit language model stuff, because that's synthetic data. On the other hand, because we rate and rank and select, right? If you submit language model things and they're really good, we will get them to the top of what we train with. And if they're bad, we will get them to the bottom, right? So in that case, we still have a handle on quality, even if it comes from a language model. We do explicitly, our guidelines say we don't want stuff from other language models, but obviously we can't prevent anyone from copy-pasting over something. Yeah, I hope that answers the question. Yeah.
Maybe one more question about the guidelines. Was it that important from the very beginning that this is about how to have it qualitatively high?
Yeah, the guidelines are to align. So for some things, you want to really outsource the problem of, what is funny, right? What is funny? Mm-hmm. You can't just write down, okay, here are the criteria for funny. Otherwise, you just build robot comedian. So that is something you just want to outsource. You want to say, however you interpret that word, put the label, right? Because that's how we capture the breadth of human. On the other hand, what is spam? Mm-hmm. Like, what do we not want in the data set? That is, we are very explicit about, look, here are the criteria for spam. So I think the guidelines serve as, on the points where it's necessary, aligning the different humans from different backgrounds and so on, to have one clear interpretation of, like, this is what we want, this is what we don't want. Like, these topics are okay, and these topics here are not okay. And yeah, that's what the guidelines were mostly used for.
Thank you very much. That was amazing and very interesting. Thank you, Yannick Kilcher. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Applause for Yannick.
Oh, thank you.
Stay with me for another second. Little present for you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Thanks.